Did you think freelancing was going to be easy? I did. I had no business experience whatsoever, but when I got laid off from my job last year, I thought, how hard could it be? I burnt through my savings like a wildfire, even working 50 to 60 hours a week. That was until I eventually figured some things out and I was able to match what I was making at that corporate job I left. So in this video, I'm going to tell you 27 things I wish I knew before I started freelancing so you can make good money straight from the start. The first lesson I learned is don't wait to start. I dreamed of being able to work from anywhere and live a location-independent lifestyle, but I was always scared to start freelancing. And I thought that I just needed more experience, I needed an accountant, I needed a business plan, I needed a better portfolio, all these things that weren't actually true when I was forced to just start. And what I found out by just diving headfirst into freelancing is that you just need to start and the rest will follow. The next lesson I learned is that a lead is never dead, just cold. Now, if you're a creative, then maybe the words lead kind of just makes your skin crawl.
Brother,
because it's like a sales word and you don't think of yourself as a salesman. But if you're going to be a freelancer, you have to be a salesperson. So always hold on to contact information, even if it doesn't go anywhere at the start. Well, I'm a freelance video editor and I actually got my first freelance client by contacting a YouTuber who I reached out to years ago and I did a test edit for. And at that time, I didn't get the job, but I stayed in touch with him and he was able to connect me to another YouTuber he knew who was looking for an editor. So had I deleted his contact information and never contacted him again, I wouldn't have gotten that first client. Now, the third lesson that I wish I knew is that there are whales and minnows as far as clients. Whales are clients with big budgets and minnows are clients with little budgets. So I don't know if you've ever read the book Moby Dick. I don't recommend it, but I did read it in high school for an English class. And what I remember from that is the way that they process whales when they're whaling is they have to anchor the ship where it's at and collect all they can from the whale. And that's sort of the same thing with freelancing clients, right? If you have a big client, you can't really take on any other clients. You need to anchor yourself with that client and stay committed and reap the benefits of that one client. Whereas if you have multiple small clients, it gives you much more freedom. So the advantages of having whales for clients is that there's more money, more consistent income, and you don't have to do as much outreach. But the disadvantages there are that there's more bureaucracy, you have less freedom with your time and location, and you oftentimes have less creative control. Whereas if you have multiple small clients or minnows, you'll have more creative control, you'll have more freedom, and they're easier to find rather than these big whales. The whales are few and far between, but while minnow clients are much easier to find, obviously there's disadvantages like lower pay, and you need to find multiple clients, so that means you need to do more outreach. And oftentimes it's less professional than, say, a corporate client, so you have to deal with somebody's personality, and that could be hit or miss. Now, the next thing I want you to know is that no rush doesn't mean no rush. So you have to think like your client. A lot of times they'll say no rush on a project because they want to be nice, you know, they don't want to put a lot of pressure on you, but that doesn't actually mean just take your time. You know, you should always be trying to underpromise and overdeliver to your clients. So if they don't give you a hard deadline, still try to get it done as quick as possible because that'll make your client happy, that'll make them come back to you, and that means more money. The next thing is don't do a free trial project. I know it's tempting, especially when you're first starting out, to do a free trial project for free. You know, you just think that if you can impress them, then they'll hire you and you'll start making some money. But this is a pitfall that every freelancer falls into, me included at the beginning. And trust me, it is not worth it. Most of the time when you do a free test edit, one of two things happens. You either get ghosted or they ghost you. Now, the only time a trial project has worked out for me is when I did it for a well-established big media company that I knew wasn't just gonna take my project and run. But most of the time, when you do a free project, you can either get ghosted or they could steal your work. So I would just avoid it altogether. And you have to keep in mind that if a client is willing to pay for a test edit, then that means they respect your work and your time. And that means they'll probably be a good client. The next one is don't take it personal. So if a lead doesn't convert or you get let go by a client, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or your skills.
You're giving me the it's not you, it's me routine?
Sometimes the timing just isn't right. Sometimes another freelancer gets to them first. Sometimes their budget just doesn't match your rates. There are a ton of different factors in play that are out of your control, so if you get let go by a client or they don't hire you, just hold on to their contact information and move on to the next one. You also need to know that you're never done doing outreach. Dedicate a couple of hours every day to reaching out to potential clients and applying to jobs. Even if you're all booked up, you never know when a client might drop you or a better opportunity might come around. The more leads and clients you have, the more leverage you have. And trust me, it's better to take the extra time every day to market yourself while you're busy than to scramble to try to find clients when you have no work. The next thing is to use AI in your workflow. Now, a lot of people might not want to hear this, but AI is here to stay. And the sooner that you learn how to use it, then the better off you'll be. I use AI in my workflow every single day, and it has supercharged my abilities. It has taken my skills from a video editor to a one-man post-production house. Now, if you're worried that AI is going to take your job, think about it as like the tractor to the farmer. Farmers used to till the land by hand, and then they figured out that doing it with a horse is much faster, and then eventually a tractor. The tractor didn't get rid of the farmer. The farmers nowadays just use tractors every day in their work. And that's the same thing you should do with AI. Now, the biggest way I use AI is I use ChatGPT to communicate with my clients. Basically, I have a tendency to be very frank and direct, so I filter my emails through ChatGPT to make me a little bit more polite. And of course, I tailor the emails after ChatGPT spits them back out to me, because if not, it would just be all M dash, and well, that's just too obvious you're using ChatGPT. The next thing is to know how to position yourself in the market. You should be able to clearly define what you offer, who it's for, and why you're the best choice. Now, many freelancers, myself included at the beginning, they struggle to find work, or the work they do find isn't fulfilling or doesn't pay enough. Now, while it might work in the beginning to just take whatever job you can get, it's not a strong strategy in the long run. And I'll tell you why. You need to define your unique value proposition. This means figuring out what you do differently than your competition. That way you can attract your ideal clients rather than just chasing every opportunity you see on Fiverr. Now, a simple way you can start this is by filling out the blanks in this statement. I help blank with blank so they can blank. So my positioning statement would be, I help educational YouTubers with video editing so they can attract an audience. You should have boundaries. You need to set very clear boundaries with your clients from the very beginning. So that means creating contracts and getting things in writing. Even if you just use a template that you find online, you need to define the scope of work up front, so you need to know what's included and what isn't, the number of revisions, the delivery timeline, and the payment details, and have that all laid out before you even start the project. Also, don't answer messages when you're not on the clock. Schedule your calls instead of just taking random calls throughout the day. Charge more if it's a rush job, and be able to say no. The next one is to set realistic deadlines. Life happens. Give yourself some leniency to finish your projects if your client doesn't have a specific deadline. Don't miss your deadlines. If your client gives you a hard deadline, you should do everything in your power to not miss it. If your client can depend on you to turn things in on time, then they'll keep coming back. And yeah, life happens. Sometimes you miss a deadline. If it happens, just try not to let it happen again and keep going. The next is don't work hourly. So working hourly just puts you in an uncomfortable position. You have to track your hours, which can be annoying. And if you're actually efficient at your job, you can be punished for being efficient because you get paid less if you take less time. And on the other end, if a project takes longer than a client expects, they could think you're trying to rip them off, or you're not being honest, or you're just inefficient. And so that's why using a project-based price or using a retainer system with your client is so much better, at least in my experience, because both parties know exactly what they're going to pay right from the beginning. Be a doctor, not a salesman. So this goes for finding new clients. Look, no one likes to be sold to.
They're selling, Mortimer!
Well, that's ridiculous.
As soon as someone knows they're being sold to, their skin's gonna start itching and they're gonna put up their defense mechanisms. It's gonna be fight or flight. So you don't want to just try to convince a client how great you are and why they need to hire you. You should listen to their problems and give them suggestions the way that a doctor would. A doctor listens to your symptoms and then prescribes you a medication that's worked in the past with other patients. So listen to your clients' problems and tell them how you've been able to help other clients with the same problems. If the vibes are off, listen to your gut. So I had a client who I found on a site like Indeed who was looking for a freelance video editor. So I reached out to him for a discovery call. Immediately when he answered the call, it seemed like he was in a bad mood. He just started dumping on me about all this stress in his life, and he did not seem very happy to be talking to me. And what was supposed to be a half-hour discovery call turned into an hour-and-a-half call. And throughout that whole call, he could not tell me what he was looking for in an editor. Unfortunately, I did a paid edit for him, and after that, I just had to end the relationship because it was just not going anywhere and the vibes were off, so I ended it. So that's the next lesson, is to know when to end a relationship with a client. Sometimes you're going to have to fire a client, and that could just be because they're not a good fit, or maybe their needs don't meet your needs. When you do have to fire a client, try not to burn the bridge. Keep their contact info just in case you run into a dry spell down the road. Next is keep regular hours. So even though you can pick your own hours as a freelancer and you can work anywhere in the world at any time, you should try to stick to the same hours every single day for your own sanity. For me, if I don't start working early and I keep putting it off, it just becomes a vicious cycle where I start working late and then I get out of work late and then I end up going to bed late and then I wake up late and then I start work late, and it just turns into a negative feedback loop. So try to keep consistent hours. For me, I do 10 to 6 every day, and that seems to work. Make sure you save for taxes. So because you're your own boss and you're not an employee, that means your employer won't withhold your taxes. So you have to pay your own income taxes. The thrills of owning your own business. Now, a general rule of thumb is to save 25 to 30% of your income for taxes. On the plus side, you can write off business expenses for things like your home office or insurance premiums, equipment. So all that being said, don't be scared of taxes. I filed my own taxes this year and it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. If you can afford it, by all means hire an accountant, but don't feel like you absolutely need an accountant to be able to file your taxes. I think it's if you make less than $84,000 a year, then you can actually just use a free tax software that is linked on the IRS government site, and the software walks you through how to file your taxes. So it's not that hard. Because after all, like Benjamin Franklin said, there's 3 things in life that you can't avoid: death, taxes, and hitting the subscribe button. The next thing is don't have fixed rates. So some typical freelancing advice would be to have a perfectly polished landing page that tells your clients exactly what your packages are and your prices. But if you do this, you could be leaving money on the table. As soon as you have fixed rates, you're subconsciously telling your clients that you're not open to a negotiation. And you could be landing less clients because of that, or getting underpaid. You should get clients on a call. And the reason you do this is because if you tell them your price right away, then that's kind of all that you become. They compare your price to the next freelancer out there, and it just becomes a race to the bottom. Whereas if you get a client on a call, then you can really convey your value and make a personal connection. If a client is willing to be on a call with you, then that means they're already interested, and it gives you a chance to be a doctor and listen to their problems and tell them how you can be the solution to those problems. You can also check the vibe of the relationship right off the bat to see if you think it's going to be a good fit. And then your client's not just looking at a portfolio and a number, they're talking to you, a real person. And because you're a real person, please take care of your health. It's so easy to fall into hustle culture,
all in the whole way, every minute,
and just become a workaholic when you're running your own business. But don't let work become your only priority. You still need to take care of yourself. You should get enough sleep, try to eat healthy, try to get up and move and do something, even if it's just walking around your neighborhood. Also, have hobbies outside of work. When you own your own business, your business becomes all you think about. So try to have a couple other interests outside of work that can take your mind off of things. That way you can actually disconnect from work and think about something else, so when you come back, you're fully recharged and do better. It can even be simple things like watching TV or movies or playing video games. For me, I love watching movies and anime, and I'm currently trying to learn Japanese, so when I have free time, I try to study. Speaking of burnout, you need to take what I like to call resting work days. So unfortunately, as a freelancer, you're not like a salaried worker who gets paid whether or not they're working. If you don't work, you don't get paid. Because of that, it can feel so hard to justify taking a day off of work. That's why I implement what I like to call resting work days. And these are basically days where you leave tasks that don't require as much mental energy to do all in one day. Possibly when you have the least energy, like a Friday or maybe in the middle of the week. And that way you can remain productive, but still have easier days every once in a while. So this can mean that you just have one day that you dedicate to emails and outreach. Or if that's the hard part for you, you could have one day where you just dedicate to client revisions and not so much heavy lifting that requires a lot of brain power. I do this and it has definitely saved me from burning out. Another thing you need to know is to be precious with your time. Again, as a freelancer, if you're not working, you're not making money. So your time is precious. Don't let people waste it. That being said, your clients are busy too. Don't waste their time. Most clients actually don't want to micromanage you. They want someone that they can just give the work off to and you take the baton and take it across the finish line. They don't want to be involved in every step of the process. They want to trust that you will get the project to where it needs to be. So try not to reach out to your client with tons of questions if you can figure things out on your own, even if it's just by Googling. Your client will value your resourcefulness and they'll keep hiring you because of that. The next lesson is to prioritize those who prioritize you. If a client is consistent every month, sets realistic deadlines, and treats you with respect, hold on to them for dear life. Even if the pay is a little lower than what you can get from other clients, having that consistent income can be a lifesaver during a dry month, because you should expect that your income will fluctuate. All freelancers go through periods with little to no work. It's completely normal. Clients come and go, projects start and end, and sometimes unpredictably. On top of saving for taxes, you should try to squirrel away some money as a safety net for when things get slow. Also, try to diversify your income with investments or maybe digital products. And the next lesson is don't expect to make great money right away. Building a business takes time, and building trust with your clients takes time. Building a portfolio takes time. Building systems takes time. It took me over 9 months to make as much money freelancing as I did at my corporate job, and it was an accumulation of little wins over time that got me there. If you're interested, I made a whole video in which I talk about my journey from $0 to $3,000 a month as a freelancer, and you can check that out here. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you over there. Peace.
If you walked into my home, punched me directly in the face, and stabbed me with a knife in my left arm while I was sleeping, and robbed everything in my home, I'd still not wake up.